Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all upcoming videos in the future. Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome to another video we are going to be bringing you today, in which we are going to be examining a theory on Kanzenshuu forums. And of course, Kanzenshuu is a great website and resource for Dragon Ball fans to go to find out the most accurate and credible information, aside from Geekdom 101, so that you can discover for yourself exactly what this series is really truly about, and not just what some dub told you that was completely inaccurate many years ago. So today we're going to be examining a theory in which we're going to be breaking down whether or not Goku and Vegeta are in fact the perfect fusion in Dragon Ball Z, and this theory comes courtesy of DBZ GT KOSDH, the Namekian warrior, and it is Potara multiplication. So today joining me is going to be someone you're all familiar with so far, and his name is...
MJ from Geeklist TV. Thank you for having me, Mike.
Okay, MJ, so we've discussed this a little bit off the air in the past, and we've discussed Potara multiplication, what the possible number is for it, a lot. So we want to break down this particular theory of whether or not Goku and Vegeta are in fact the perfect fusion, and that ties into, say, the Potara Fusion, which was stated in the super exciting guides, and basically it stated that the Potara Fusion is closer to A times B equals C, or at least in the case of Goku and Vegeta, so he's kind of seeming to say that perhaps theirs was a multiplication because they're more of the perfect fusion. So, MJ, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, before I actually get into this theory, I will elaborate on the A times B equals C, and that comes from the super exciting guys, which use Daizenshuu 7 reprints, and obviously one of the main things that comes from there, and which I see a lot of people bring up, is on page 63, it describes the Potara Fusion as being closer to multiplication rather than simple addition. A graphical depiction of this infers that Vegeta's battle power would be equivalent to Goku's battle power being multiplied by Vegeta's battle power. Alright, so that's just been in the fandom for a while now, so whenever you see people talking about Potara Fusion, they're usually talking about A times B equals C, and that's where it comes from. It basically comes from the super exciting guides, because they state that Vegeta's battle power would be Goku's battle power multiplied by Vegeta's, at least a graphical depiction of it would be. Now, looking at this guy's theory, and it's a great theory by the way, he talks about the Potara Fusion to get the result of A times B, the two people that merge together must have some connections to each other, which I do agree with, and he goes into detail on the Kaioshin, the old Kaioshin I should say, then Kabuto Shin, and Goten, which is a hypothetical Goku versus Goku and Satan fusion, right?
Yeah, and if you recall, during the Buu Saga and during the manga, Goku stated that if he were to fuse with Mr. Satan, that it would be a very minor increase, and if anything, he might actually lose some of his power or ability to, like, control Ki. And I think a lot of that could also be because of the fact that, you know, Mr. Satan knew nothing about Ki or control over it, so it could actually diminish his overall power, you know, hypothetically.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But looking at his theory, he brings up the old Kaioshin, and the old Kaioshin, in my opinion, is one of the best examples because if I remember correctly, and you can correct me right now if I'm wrong or not, doesn't Kaioshin say that most of the Supreme Kais, or all of them, could have defeated Frieza? Or that Frieza does not compare to them?
Yeah, he states that any of the Supreme Kais at the time could have destroyed Frieza with a single blast. Like, they were all well above him, and some people try and say that perhaps that he was referring to Frieza's most suppressed 530,000 form, because a lot of people like to kind of, like, downplay the power of the Kaioshin. However, it's pretty much, you know, clear that he was referring to final form Frieza, especially considering how well, you know, the Kaioshin does against Majin Buu when he fights with Gohan against him.
Yeah, definitely. So even if you downplay the Elder Kai, like when he was, you know, kind of like tricked into this fusion, right? Even if you downplay him and say his battle power was 200,000, that's a very low downplay for him. I would assume he would be stronger than that. There's no way, even if the Witch, which I'm assuming that the Witch would have a higher power level than a regular human, even if you, just because of the fact that she's a witch, but she is a humanoid looking being, 200,000 times 5, that would still make him a million and it would make him stronger, yet he's depicted as being weaker after fusing with her, you know?
Yeah.
And basically he goes into detail that the reason why the Kaioshin would be weaker than Elder Kai, a Kaioshin merged with a female witch. Kaioshins are Shinjin, genderless, powerful beings, while the witch was an earthling-like humanoid with no fighting power. The result was an imperfect fusion that did not give the result of A times B equals C, which I agree with. You know what I mean? Because the Elder Kai should not have gotten weaker, in my opinion. In fact, he should have gotten stronger. In fact, maybe not so much as, like, I guess what would be the word? Like, maybe I think his durability or his physical raw power should have been increased due to the fact that he was just fusing with somebody. That should have given him an increase. Yet, like I mentioned earlier, he was depicted as being weaker, you know?
Absolutely. It is kind of strange to look at it and to see that you are fusing with another being, and yet somehow your power is dropping. So this does kind of make sense. It does seem plausible in this example as to perhaps why he would have gotten weaker and gone down.
Another example, Mike, is Kibito Shin. What do you want to talk about that one?
Well, now with Kibito Shin, the whole thing is that, Supreme Kai, or the Kaioshin, essentially merged with Kibito. Now, Kibito, even though I guess he might have technically been weaker than base Gohan because he wasn't able to lift the Z-Sword, which Gohan and Goku in their base forms were capable of, the fact of the matter is that Kibito was not super weak by any standards, and also the Kaioshin was pretty strong by Z standards, at least up until that point. Like, he was weaker than the Super Saiyans, the Super Saiyan 2s at least. However, he himself was arguably more powerful by a lot than Frieza, the android, so on and so forth. So when you take the two of them and fuse them together, it would seem like they really should be a lot more powerful as a result. And according to him, he states the Kaioshin merged with his Shinjin assistant. While both of them are the same race, they have a different body type, and Kaioshin was much stronger, and he was a god. And this is correct because obviously Kibito is way bigger than the Kaioshin, and the Kaioshin was far more powerful than Kibito. So if their battle powers were multiplied, they would at least be the second strongest being in existence other than Vegito. And yet he states that as a result of a imperfect fusion, because of the differences between them, it did not give them an A times B, because realistically, if the two of them fused together and it really was A times B, they would have easily been able to beat Boo in, just with their fused form.
Yeah, I would agree, because you would have to at least assume Kaioshin is in the billions, at least around a billion, and then dude, even if Kibito was 500, that would make him pretty powerful, you know what I mean? And we know for a fact he was at least over 500. I mean, that's a Earthling below Saiyan Saga level number, so...
Yeah, he's definitely got to be more powerful than the vast majority of the universe, considering how low he looked at mortals and how shocked he was that a mortal could be so powerful when Gohan turned into a Super Saiyan and then a Super Saiyan 2. So he's got to be in the millions. So, like, if Kaioshin has a power level of lowballing 1 billion and then he multiplies his power by 1 million, that is over a quadrillion, So clearly he would annihilate, like, everyone, and yet he doesn't. And so I think that that's pretty good with this theory of what he's saying, that it makes sense as to why they didn't become as powerful as they should have.
Yeah, and you've already talked about Goten, which was the hypothetical fusion of Goku and Satan. They're, different races, different body types, different personalities. So, of course, they did not give the result of A times B. At least that's what he's saying hypothetically, I don't think Goku would have gotten weaker. I think he would have increased in raw power because, again, I would assume Satan has to have at least a power level of 5, if not a bit higher. So that would have increased Goku overall. But anyways, moving on to Vegito. He says Vegito. Goku and Vegeta merged. Unlike in the previous cases, Goku and Vegeta share a lot of similar and opposite characteristics. They are both Saiyans, which is correct. They are close in age, again, sort of correct. They are close in power, again, sort of correct. They belong in the top category of the strongest fighters in the universe. Again, correct. They have a similar body type. I actually disagree with that. And then their personalities are completely opposite. Examples, Goku shows mercy, Vegeta doesn't. Goku cares for others, Vegeta doesn't. And Goku is pure, Vegeta isn't. They are rivals. So because of the above, they make a perfect fusion, which gives you a result of A times B, which I actually disagree with, Mike, because if that was the case, and we actually lowball, like let's lowball Goku and Vegeta's base power levels, let's just put them at 25 million. If you multiply 25 million by, let's just say they're equal 25 million again, that's a really, a really high number. We're talking 4 sets of 3 zeros, you know, that's a really high number. So I think it's a bit weird because then you would have to multiply again by 50. That's an incredibly even higher number. So I don't see that being the case. Now, people might argue with me, well, MJ, what about the anime? Because, you know, Vegeta was dominating Buhan in the anime. I guess you can argue there, but at the same time, I just still don't think Vegeta would have had that high of a base, you know, in my opinion.
Especially because the case that Buu with his absorption is implied to be adding to his power as opposed to multiplying. So, like, when he absorbs Gohan, he's adding Gohan's power to his own, which is the combination of Goten, Trunks, and Piccolo, as well as, you know, Fat Buu and Kid Buu, and, you know, the other ones inside of him. So the fact that, like, Vegeta would be a combination of, you know, 25 million times 25 million, or maybe even their maximum, so Goku as a Super Saiyan 3 and Vegeta as a Super Saiyan 2 at their absolute maximum powers, multiplied that, and either that's the base form of Vegito, or that's their maximum power, that is such a gigantic difference in power that there's literally no reason why they ever would have even needed to turn into a Super Saiyan, even just to play with them, because 1% of their power would probably be enough to absolutely annihilate Buhan in every sense of the word. And yet, even in the anime, for example, when Buhan is doing that scream that's supposedly going to destroy the entire universe and the connected dimensions as a, you know, result of a chain reaction, they still have trouble as a Super Saiyan kind of breaking through his barrier. So either you're going to say that Buhan, when he gets pissed off and is screaming, becomes like millions of times stronger, or we're going to have to say that it doesn't necessarily make sense in either the anime or the manga that it's A times B equals C.
Definitely. Now, let me ask you this question, Mike. Who do you think would actually be a perfect fusion? I'm kind of under the impression that if there is a perfect fusion that would have given off something remotely similar to A times B equals C, it probably would have been the hypothetical fusion of Gohan and Goku, in my opinion. Similar heights, similar characteristics. They both have similar biology, because even though Gohan is half Earthling, he still is half Saiyan, etc., etc. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that they probably would have been a closer fusion because of their bodies. However, Gohan was so much more powerful in his ultimate form than Goku was as a Super Saiyan 3 that it is kind of questionable, because even then there is a big difference in power. Like, Goku and Vegeta was a big difference in power too, because Goku could transform into a Super Saiyan 3, which is 4 times more powerful than Super Saiyan 2. So even their power was different. And, you know, going back to that whole similar body type, for example, Vegeta's like a foot shorter than Goku almost. So, like, they're not necessarily similar. I think a more perfect fusion probably would have been like Zamasu with Zamasu. Instead of Zamasu fusing with Goku Black, if he had, say, fused with himself and he never even took over Goku's body, since they're literally 2 of the same person and they probably have a very similar level of power, that probably would have made more sense as like the literal perfect fusion. Because when you think about it, who is really a perfect person to fuse with? Because everyone is different in their own different ways. Like, you know, everyone has differences in body, everyone has differences in, you know, how they think about their powers, about how they've gone about throughout their entire lives. So what really is a perfect fusion? I mean, would it just have to be twins that have basically, worked out together their entire lives and have pretty much gone through the same experiences? Or could, like, say, Tien or Piccolo split themselves in 2 and then put a Potara earring on each ear and fuse together and they're more powerful than ever? Like, it's really difficult to really establish what the perfect fusion is. However, I would think that there's an argument that Vegeta and Goku were not the perfect fusion because there are a good amount of differences between the 2 in power, in height, in a lot of other things, and even age. Whereas Gohan, I guess, like, would have been so powerful that even if he fused with Goku, even if it wasn't a perfect fusion, it probably still would have been stronger than Vegito because of just how big of a difference there was in power. Whereas Vegeta was was the weaker one previously. Now Goku is the weaker one, you know? So I don't really know.
Even though I do like his theory, and we talked about it off air all the time, and I do love his theory, Super kind of goes against this theory, because there's a line when Gawasu is talking to Zamasu, and Gawasu mentions to Zamasu that if they were to merge, when he makes that gag joke about if he put the earring on the wrong ear, that they would fuse into one powerful warrior. Now, whether that was a joke or not, Gawasu's implying that they would have increased in power. And I mean, when you look at Gawasu and Zamasu, there are certain differences, you know, different characteristics, different age, different body types, and then I would assume Zamasu has a higher battle power as well. So even though there's all these differences between these two different Kaioshin, Gawasu did sort of imply that they would become one single powerful warrior, you know? So that kind of...
Well, let's also think about like this too. The Potara Fusion is the invention, or at least the tool, of the Kaioshin. It's not really meant to be for mortals. It's not like the mortals were given these earrings. Only the Kaioshin were. And then Dragon Ball Super, they kind of expand upon that with the whole retcon of, you know, oh, if it's not the fusion between Kaioshins, it only lasts for about an hour. So perhaps a more perfect fusion would only really be between Kais or Kaioshin, because of the fact that they, you know, were the ones that the earrings were intended for in the first place.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I think overall, people will probably disagree with us on this, and there's different theories. I mean, we can even scroll up through this content you formed. There's many different theories on base Vegito and his power, many different theories on the Potara multiplier, but I think at the end of the day, I think it kind of just comes down to plot convenience, right? I think it's just a bit inconsistent. Like, I think Obito Shin should have been portrayed stronger than what he was. I think even Super kind of portrays Goku and Vegeta to be, I would assume, a bit weaker, just due to the fact that if you're talking about Goku and Vegeta, who are extremely powerful now, we're talking SSG level in their base, if you want to follow that theory, and then I just feel like it's a bit inconsistent, you know, the whole Potara Fusion, in my opinion.
I mean, a lot of the power scaling in Dragon Ball is very inconsistent, and that's why we have to make so many videos about it in the first place, because if it was consistent and if it was clear, then why would we need to make videos? All you have to do is watch the show and immediately know what's going on. But especially with regard to the Buu saga and afterward, oof, that becomes really difficult to scale. But overall, I feel like this was a really interesting theory that we've been examining today. However, MJ and I do definitely have our own kind of reservations, and I think both of us more or less don't really feel like they were the perfect fusion, and that it was along the lines of A times B because of how ridiculous it would be by comparison. So let us know your own thoughts down below in the comments section about whether or not you think that this theory is correct, whether or not you think that perhaps they are the perfect fusion if Potara is always A times B. Maybe you just think Obito and Kaioshin have a power level of like 10 each or something like that. Because I know people love to downplay Kaioshin. He was afraid of Pui Pui, Mike. No, he wasn't. Come on. He could solo everyone on Babidi's ship except for like Deborah. Come on. But anyway, let me know your own thoughts down below. And also go over to Geeklist TV's channel. Give him a subscribe. Check out his content because he makes very similar content to this. And of course, if you like this video, please drop a like as it really does help the channel. And if you like content like this, I would encourage you to subscribe to this channel so you can see more content like this in the future, and enable notifications so you can see all this content right away when it comes out. And as I always say, stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future. Blah, subscribe, fuck you. Blah.